estrada, amigo vai. Por essa estrada, amigo vai. Não percas tempo que o vento é meu amigo também.
It's the day before the Maria Manuela sets sail. In 24 hours, the tall ship will make for Canada, a voyage it hasn't taken in over 25 years. And never in such luxury. A delegation of visitors is here to wish a safe journey and to take a close-up look. This four-mast fishing schooner was once a member of the Portuguese White Fleet that sailed to Canada every year. It has risen from the scrapyard into full glory.
When I hear White Fleet, I think of sails and masts and streets crowded with foreign fishermen. Made St. John's quite exotic in a way. I remember Portuguese fishermen playing football on the dock in St. John's. I remember the September hurricane season, usually with, I would think, 30, 40 or more White Fleet in St. John's. And of course you remember seeing the fishermen by the dozens, the hundreds, walking up and down the streets of St. John's and looking in the shop windows, not buying very much because I don't think they had a lot of money to buy frivolous things.
Then as a physician, we saw quite a few of the Portuguese and Spanish seamen who used to come, fishermen, and I remember the Portuguese in St. John's back in the old days, around Water Street. I remember them, in and out of the stores.
It was romantic-looking ships that came into the harbour, and as they got a little older, they got a little bit more paint off, not quite as elegant, but you could see by just looking at them that they did carry a history of an industry that, gee, was dear to all Newfoundlanders' hearts. And they just livened up our whole waterfront. And it was just so great to see these young men in their bright colored clothes, purples, orange, yellows. Newfoundland men didn't wear those colors.
I think it would be a wonderful sight to see the Santa Maria Manuela sailing into St. John's, once again as a vestige of what the White Fleet was.
Sailing the Santa Maria Manuela to Canada is a dream of its co-owner, Annibal Payon.
And St. John's is special, of course, because it's the first time in many, many years that Santa Maria Manuela goes again to St. John's.
Payon's father, grandfather, and great-grandfather were all captains in the Portuguese White Fleet. His own fish company paid most of the $10 million to refurbish the Santa Maria Manuela, with some help from the European Union.
I must ask our Canadian friends to come to see the vessel. All this works. This is a sailing vessel. We go to Canada sailing. If there are no wind, okay, we have the engine, of course. There's a fantastic story to tell. All over the world.
It's part of the history of the North Atlantic.
This is the history of North Atlantic, of the fishery of North Atlantic, and the history of Portugal during the 20th century.
Portuguese navigator Gaspar Corte Real first visited the Newfoundland Grand Banks around 1500. In fact, to this day, Portuguese vessels can still be found fishing off the coast of Newfoundland. Most famous are the White Fleet fishermen, who risk their lives in tiny dories catching codfish, one by one.
We don't want to forget this fantastic work of the Portuguese in the Grand Banks.
Well, we are here in the bridge.
Outside is quite traditional. Inside is 21st century. So let's go. Come on, please. I would like to show you the film.
In 1964, the National Film Board of Canada crossed the Atlantic on board the Santa Maria Manuela. They would fish alone, at sea, for 12 hours a day, with only mother ships like the Santa Maria Manuela nearby if anything went wrong. But a bell isn't a guarantee when fog rolls in thick, or waves suddenly rise to swamp a dory loaded to the gunnels with cod. On board, the work continued for many more hours, cleaning the day's catch. The work stopped long enough just to eat and sleep. Fresh water and personal space were scarce. Over the centuries, hundreds of Portuguese fishermen have drowned off the coast of Greenland, Nova Scotia, and of course, Newfoundland and Labrador. It's a history close to the hearts of the Portuguese and stirring to others who learn about it.
Unto him, O Lord, in the perpetual age and abandon. May his soul and all the souls of the people departed, to the mercy of God, rest in peace. Amen.
They have a very difficult life, and dangerous, of course. And well, but it was possible, and we should be very honored by the life that those men have in the past.
It's bringing history back to in the context of our cooperation between Canada and Portugal, which goes back to, almost 1500.
Former crew and officers of the White Fleet have a special place of honor on board the Santa Maria Manuela. On this day, 5 retired White Fleet captains meet in the new officers' mess. It's more comfortable than anything Chico Peyo, Annibal's father, had during his days at sea.
We wonder have a ship like this when we work in our terrible life that is God's fish life. I'm very proud of having a son like him.
Vitorino Rameliera is a former captain of the Santa Maria Manuela, including during the time of the National Film Board production. On that trip, a crew member died when a wave drove him into a rail, crushing his liver.
That's the only sad moment I had in my life as a captain, because I was very careful with men when they were at sea. Because they could go with fair weather, but sometimes when they come to the ship, the weather conditions were not so good. And they had a lot of rowing. They had to row. They had to be very strong, physically speaking, and also in mind. Also in mind. I think they were almost heroes, because not many people now could go out to sea like they used to do.
There are no more Atlantic crossings in Rameliera's future. It's enough now just to remember.
The story of Santa Maria Manuela, we can say, is the story of Portuguese fishing. And nowadays, it would be very, very bad that this ship could be lost.
But the schooner is reborn, and its return to St. John's is something to celebrate.
It's like a family, you understand it. I think it's common sense between the captains that Canadians are like a family.
We were always very friendly, and we never had any problems. Unless some liquor that's taken outside against the law. And I remember once I went to a court in St. John's as a translator. I went there, they asked me to go and to let some Portuguese fisherman was caught with a bottle of liquor. But the money they could make, it was not very much. And it's only to buy some, because they had not much money. So they could buy, gifts to take home for their wives or for their children. So it's very innocent.
The Portuguese have fished the North Atlantic for centuries. But the term White Fleet first appeared in the 20th century.
Well, the White Fleet originated with the Second World War when Portugal was neutral. And as such, to identify its vessels, the hulls of all of the multicolored schooners all became white with the national flag of Portugal on it. And they had to operate with full navigational lights at night. And because of their white color, they traditionally became known as the White Fleet, and they continued to be well after the war. All these vessels continued to be of that same traditional white color.
During the days the White Fleet was at sea, families in Portugal would pray for the safe return of their loved ones. Religious beliefs and even state policy during a post-war dictatorship required the steady supply of cod. And of course, the Portuguese love to eat cod. To this day, codfish is still the national dish of Portugal. In homes and restaurants throughout the country, recipes for cod number in the hundreds, if not more than 1,000. These are some salt cod flakes at Pascoal's fish plant in Ilhéus. The processing is modern, but the final product is exactly the same as it's been for 500 years.
All this creates some history about this product, and continue to be like that. Continue to be like that. You go to Newfoundland and the people are salting cod, or in Nova Scotia, or now more in Norway or in Iceland. It's a prime product, very easy to cook. You don't need to be a chef. You need to just boil it. I remember very well in my parents' house, around 60s, that we used to eat cod every day.
People in Portugal eat so much cod, this company is continually searching the globe for supplies to fill their plant and feed the demand. The Santa Maria Manuela can help.
Using that vessel as a soft marketing for the product is fantastic. There's no doubt that it's different. So it's not TV or radio or whatever, it's different. So we can use that for establish our relationships all over the world. We have done that in Oslo, we got to do it in Toronto, we got to do it in Brazil. Pascoal is here for the future, preserving the history, the culture of the codfish, and everything that is related with the sea. And I hope that we will continue, and I believe in that.
Only hours and last-minute details remain before sailing west to Canada. The Santa Maria Manuela was built in 1937, one of the 3 sister ships that still survive today. They are the last of the White Fleet schooners. One of those sister ships, the Argus, is moored alongside the Santa Maria Manuela. The company bought this one as well and is planning another restoration. The Portuguese Navy owns the third ship, called the Criolla. To see the Santa Maria Manuela today, you'd never believe it was a rusted hull only a few years ago. In the 60s, the Santa Maria Manuela had her masts removed, but survived until 1992, when she lay abandoned and deteriorating. That is until Pascoal rescued the hull in 2007.
The hull was in good shape, in good condition, and it was a pity to cut this vessel in pieces.
Restoration first took place in Portugal, and then in a shipyard in Spain. Workers installed all new decks, new living quarters. Everything is new. Everything but the hull, though it's difficult to tell.
The hull is, in our opinion, pure art. You see, this is fantastic. This is quite elegant.
More than 2 years and many millions later, the Santa Maria Manuela was back.
It's a big risk, big risk. But we are here to risk. If not, I'm not a ship owner. We are very proud. We are very proud. Myself and my partner, the company, all the friends that are with us, all of us, our region, and I hope that Portugal are proud of the vessel we have here.
The Santa Maria Manuela was one of the last deep-sea schooners to fish the Canadian Grand Banks. Catching fish by hand is slow and difficult. By the 1960s, the fleet faced competition from modern fishing trawlers.
As trawlers became the mode, you know, the seamen wanted to go on the trawlers. They didn't want to go on the handliners, which was a harsh life for very little return. Their families were looked after, but there was a subsistence more than anything else.
Over time, as vessels of the White Fleet broke down, sank, or were destroyed by fire, they were not replaced. In 1974, we saw the last of the White Fleet schooners.
They had to survive. They had to either switch their method of fishing, convert the trawlers, convert the gill netters. The days of the dories were over.
Over, but not forgotten. Cod and those who catch it are honored, especially in northern Portugal. There's a museum in the town of Eliaf that preserves Portugal's fishing history. The Grand Banks of Canada are displayed prominently. The bond between Portuguese and Newfoundland fishermen is obvious. Former White Fleet captains are happy to donate from their personal collections.
I like this museum because it speaks about my life, about the life I have had. The best fish is the Newfoundland fish. Very good in quality. I think is the best we can catch in those times. The sea in Newfoundland is not a friendly sea. There are storms and the fog. The fog in Newfoundland banks, the fog is our enemy, and we need much care with the dories. My idea from Newfoundland, it's a friendly land. All the time we went ashore, we feel as just like in our own land. Everybody knows us. Everybody knows the Portuguese. The radios give the news and said we have again our friendly people, 5,000 people. In the city is too much people, but normally nothing wrong happens, and we are at home.
An hour's drive from the museum, you'll find the Gilians. Unlike the Santa Maria Manuela, the Gilians will never sail again. this former hospital ship is permanently moored. In its heyday, the surgery and hospital ward were the envy of fishermen in all the fleets that worked the Grand Banks.
Chileans was a help, and it was a comfort to everybody.
In the early morning hours of a foggy May day, the Gilianas, hospital ship of the Portuguese fishing fleet, came through the narrows of St. John's Harbor.
The Gilianas is best remembered in Newfoundland for its maiden voyage in 1955. That year, it carried a statue, the Lady of Fatima, from Portugal to the St. John's Basilica.
As they went 5,000 strong, their voices were raised in song.
All the Portuguese white fleet was in St. John's Harbor at that time. It was a fantastic ceremony with a lot of emotion. It's a piece of Portugal that is there, and it's a piece of the feelings of the Portuguese.
There will live long the memory of the moving mass of devoted sun-tanned faces, a sea of fishermen moving into the cathedral on this joyous occasion.
They were the most welcome visitors that St. John's had, along with many other seamen. But they were not fighters. They were just honest, good-living people who were a family man, and they were friendly people, and they've left very, very good memories on this side of the Atlantic.
The moment has arrived. It will take 1 month for the Santa Maria Manuela to cross the North Atlantic, marking the return of the Portuguese White Fleet. Meanwhile, 3,000 kilometers away in St. John's, Newfoundland, one woman has no idea her past will sail back into her life. The tall ship, Santa Maria Manuela, a former Portuguese White Fleet fishing schooner, is sailing towards St. John's, Newfoundland for the first time in more than 25 years. Three weeks after leaving Portugal, it has crossed the Atlantic Ocean. After a short visit to Quebec City, the Santa Maria Manuela is now navigating the St. Lawrence Seaway, en route to St. John's. The schooner has a new skipper these days, and it's not hard to tell that he's happy.
I like very much to sail her. She behaves very well at sea. Under sail, she's amazing. We feel very safe on board Santa Maria Manuela under sail, and she steers very well. She obeys. She's very beautiful from the inside, but she's more beautiful from the outside.
The Santa Maria Manuela will also serve as a training ship for sailors.
I'm the youngest officer that still can sail a tall ship, handle a tall ship under sail. And it is necessary to begin a new school of sailing in Portugal and pass the knowledge to younger officers. I'm not going to St. John's for more than 16 years, and I'm very curious about it, because we always had a very good hospitality in St. John's in good old days. And now I'm very curious to know about the changes. How is St. John's now? How is St. John's in nowadays? To compare and just to enjoy getting back to a place that we don't see for so many years.
Among the thousands of houses in downtown St. John's, one proudly displays its Portuguese roots. Linda Oliveira will always remember the Santa Maria Manuela. It delivered to her the man who would be her future husband. She was 13. Carlos Oliveira was 14 and making his first trip as part of the White Fleet.
When I saw this girl in that car, that kind of, the eyes blinking, right, and the heart stopped pumping. The heart stopped pumping, right? There was something there.
I liked him. I really did. So I got out, and we took a little walk up and down by the boats, and he took me over and he showed me the Santa Maria Manuela. It was a beautiful boat.
Over the protests of her mother, Linda wrote to Carlos in Portugal through a translator. After 4 years of letters and occasional visits, they married. They've been together ever since.
We could make it if we hold on.
There is love at first sight.
Unfortunately, not everyone in St. John's welcomed the Portuguese fishermen. Occasionally, they were shunned.
Someplace you go, right? Especially for the girl, she married a foreigner.
The worst example came during Linda and Carlos's favorite pastime. They skated together often until one day.
The manager came down and he wasn't happy that Carlos was there, and he said he didn't feel comfortable with Portuguese in the rink. And he asked me if I would tell him not to come anymore. My daughter, she came to me and she said, "Mom, why does Dad have to go? Other dads are on the ice. Why is he going?" And I said, "Well, he's not allowed to stay." There was dark times. There were issues, and things weren't always good.
But love conquers all. That rink manager moved on, and Carlos and Linda returned to the ice with flair. They've never looked back. After 30 years of marriage, their best memories are still from those early days when the White Fleet sailors came ashore.
I remember how well dressed everybody was. The shirts, all had the shirt and the tie and the suit of clothes, and mannerly, polite. I remember that the turkey dinners we'd have when they'd come in port, and it was really good. They'd bring the guitars up and banjos, and it was wonderful.
Back on board the Santa Maria Manuela, life is routine. Skies are mostly gray. The decks are quiet for long stretches of time. Fresh meals provide the greatest comfort during the long days at sea. Due to the wind, weather, and currents, much of the journey on the St. Lawrence has been made under engine power. But 4 days out from St. John's, the captain gets a clearing sky and a favorable wind.
Porém o Chico à cautela não dá trela nem diz nada, que a mãe dele quando calha ao ver que o Chico se abeira por daca aquela palha faz tremer toda a ribeira. Namoram de manhãzinha e da forma mais diversa, 2 caixotes de sardinha são 2 dedos de conversa. E há quem diga a boca cheia que depois de tanta fita o Chico de volta e meia prega 2 beijos na Rita. Quando ele passa por ela sorri descarada. Porém o Chico à cautela não dá trela nem diz nada, que a mãe dela quando calha ao ver que o Chico se abeira por daca aquela palha faz tremer toda a ribeira.
St. John's is only one day away. Time to spruce up the ship in time for the arrival of many guests. The crew looks forward to meeting old friends. Most have visited St. John's before on other ships, but Jose Nogueira has seen St. John's from the deck of the Santa Maria Manuela.
O navio de antes era pesqueiro e era de outra maneira, de outra forma. Não tem nada a ver com esta, não é? Era um navio que pescava com barcos, baleeiras, a rede e malho, e agora não. Isto é uma coisa totalmente diferente.
Years ago, Fernando Vidriero was a fisherman in the White Fleet. He overloaded his dory with cod and sank 3 times. Each time, another fisherman was nearby to save him.
A transformação e isto é um sonho que, por exemplo, eu sempre tive, quando andava no dory, cheguei a ver barcos, iates, e eu fiquei na imaginação que nunca chegaria a andar num iate assim. E quando esta proposta me surgiu, eu fiquei todo contente. Portanto, só por andar aqui sinto-me feliz. E com certeza que deve ser um projeto muito famoso, muito lindo, e continua a ser. Na altura era um jovem e não tinha medo nenhum. E, aliás, ainda há poucos dias disse, se voltasse a aparecer um navio com os dórios, eu era o primeiro a alinhar.
A dream that's about to become real. The Santa Maria Manuela is approaching the narrows of St. John's Harbor.
Azar, muito virado.
As with all true friendships, a long time apart does not weaken the bond. The city officially welcomes back its old friends at City Hall.
The connections go very, very deep, and it's the human connection. It is the numbers of people and the sailors and the fishermen that frequented St. John's for a lot of years, made a lot of friends, and became very much a part of our society.
We were far from home, but as soon as we were in St. John's, we felt like being at home. Doors were open, hearts were open to the Portuguese seamen that came to visit St. John's.
Everybody I find talks about, and you mentioned that the ceremony with the Lady of Fatima, the ships, the way the Portuguese sailors behaved after being for such a long period at sea, that I'm really proud. I'm always proud to be a Portuguese, but I'm particularly proud to be a Portuguese in St. John.
Years ago, when
I was selected to make the sculpture that represented the connection between Newfoundland and Portugal. I decided to use the image of the gate or the portal. The columns are reminiscent of the two land masses on the two sides of the Atlantic and are evocative of the rugged and rocky coastlines of both Newfoundland and Portugal. And at the top portion of the sculpture, the water, which symbolizes the raging ocean, explodes, providing a connection. Flanked by the two vertical columns is a negative space in the center in the shape of a codfish. It is elusive and almost absent. But after a few seconds of viewing, it becomes the dominant element in the composition and is representative of the historic friendship between Newfoundland and Portugal that has had the cod fishery at its heart for so many years.
Portuguese influence in Newfoundland and Labrador goes back to the earliest days of their arrival, to the very place names of towns like Portugal Cove, Bay de Verde, and Fogo Island. And it continues to this day, so familiar people hardly give them a second thought, from the streets they drive on, to the restaurants they dine in, to the people they meet, like Antonio Simões Rey, who moved to Newfoundland from Portugal in the mid-70s to go to university. Today he's a naval engineer with the National Research Council, the first in 4 generations who didn't go to sea.
My father, my uncle, my grandparents, my great-grandparents were part of the White Fleet. My father never encouraged me to go out. He felt it was a hard life. Where I come from in Portugal, Ilha was a lot of the people went out to sea. They were part of the White Fleet, so we always had a connection, seeing the ships coming in.
The family fled Portugal in 1974 after a political revolution where the fascist dictatorship was overthrown. Choosing their destination was obvious.
I don't think I chose, Newfoundland chose me. Probably the fact that my father had connections here, and my uncle, at the time, his fiancée is from Newfoundland. The connections, the family connections were there, and there was some support when I was accepted at the university. I now see myself as sort of between two places. Portugal, my birthplace, my heart goes to Portugal and all that, but at the same time, realization that in Portugal, in Newfoundland now, is where I live, where my family lives, or where I have to make a living. That connection that was originally made by just people coming in for supplies and for fishing and for one industry are staying as a cultural friendship between two different nations, but at the same time very similar people. They were fishermen, they were people that moved away to make a living, but so there's that connection there.
The connection drew Simões Rey to visit the Santa Maria Manuela while it was docked in St. John's.
Seeing that sort of gets your pride, you realize that you're part of a culture that designed these, sailed these, and to show the next generation how important that was, I think is fantastic.
Over a 4-day visit to St. John's, thousands of people steadily come on board the Santa Maria Manuela.
We used to come down here whenever the fleet came in, and we play soccer with these guys. They used to play barefoot, and we had where I grew up in the west end of town, we had some pretty good soccer players, so we used to come down here and hone our skills. It was priceless. And to see this vessel here today, absolutely amazing, looks in a little better shape than some of the ones that were here back in the day, but beautiful boat, I mean, it was color and texture, That's what we had here at one time. Now it's good. All I can say, it's good to see these guys back, I mean, for me personally.
The sun was coming down on her, and she turned around a couple of times in the water, like she was crouching. Beautiful. She was a gem in the morning now.
I'm very happy, very, very happy. I have a small tear coming, so because she's beautiful, and in this wharf here, where all the people of my family during so many years, my father, my grandfather, and well, this for me it's a special moment, special. I think that everything was perfect. We have a lot of people here. We have excellent talks with the authorities, with the friends. We came. I think that we don't have so many Portuguese here in this moment, but I think that the Portuguese that are here are again together. I think there are, and that is also very important for me, because I'm Portuguese, and I would like that my citizens, fellows, are connected with each other, and Santa Maria Manuela is a link between the two countries, the two communities, between St. John's and Ilhavo, and I'm very proud of that. I'm happy.
For Linda Oliveira, it was like going back in time.
Beautiful. Absolutely stunning. It represents wonderful relationships.
The connection still there as part of Newfoundland heritage, really.
They're kind of a part of us, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's time for the Santa Maria Manuela to return to Portugal. She leaves after meeting old friends, discovering new ones, and making a promise to return again, to keep alive the memory of the Portuguese White Fleet.
Fazer hoje, porque amanhã sei que voltas a adiar, e tu bem sabes como o tempo foge, mas nada